Pennsylvania boasts America's first covered bridge and has over 200 covered bridges still standing, more than any other state in the country. Choosing just a handful to visit is like trying to decide in a candy store. But these flavors are oldest, longest, just plain typical, unique, fancy. Roger McCain is professor in the Department of Economics and International Business at Drexel University. He publishes articles with titles like Fuzzy Confidence Intervals in a Theory of Economic Rationality. And he was the first to post a list of covered bridges on the World Wide Web way back in the early 1990s. High tech met old tech.
That's probably how I became a little more known, that crazy covered bridge guy on the internet. Well, one of the things I really enjoy about finding covered bridges is that so many of them are really in quite remote spots, places you wouldn't go for any practical purpose as a rule. Some of them can be tricky to find, too.
Eastern PA, here we come. There are two Dutch styles here, fancy and plain.
In the Berks County, the area that people call the fancy Dutch country, you would see some very ornate covered bridges with hex signs and ornamental carpentry.
Historians debate whether hex signs have ornamental or magical meaning, but they reflect fancy Dutch rather than plain or Amish and Mennonite styles. Wirtz's Bridge, or Wirtz's Red Bridge, is a centerpiece of the Berks County Heritage Center. Built in 1867 with a Burr arch, it stretches more than 200 feet over Topelhocken Creek, the longest single-span covered bridge in Pennsylvania. Closed to traffic, Wirtz's covered bridge has beautiful hex art. Remote Drybelbus Station Covered Bridge was built in 1869 over Maiden Creek. It still bears traffic and has both hex signs and fancy opening or portal architecture. Built very long ago in 1832, Griesemer's Mill Bridge has a Burr arch and spans 124 feet over Monotony Creek. It's Berks County's oldest covered bridge and has lovely hex art. Adjacent to the bridge is a non-working but picturesque old stone grist mill. Lancaster County, southwest of Berks County, is noted for its Amish and Mennonite culture. The county has the second largest number of covered bridges of any state in the country. Berks County was fancy Dutch. Lancaster County is plain Dutch. Pine Grove Covered Bridge over Octoraro Creek dates from the 1880s. Other bridges here had been swept away by floods. Pine Grove is another covered bridge with a split personality.
The far end of the bridge is definitely in Chester County, this end is definitely in Lancaster County, and perhaps the middle is a little ambiguous for all I know. There are really two bridges here. Because it's a long double bridge, there are two successive arches on each side of the bridge.
Pine Grove Covered Bridge was restored in 2008. Not far from Pine Grove lies White Rock, or White Rock Forge Bridge.
It's a smaller bridge. It is on the west branch of Octoraro Creek, so it's in the same watershed. It's in one of those bridges that's in a place most people don't go very often. This is a pretty old bridge in a sense. The original covered bridge here was built in 1846, but it was destroyed in the 1880s, and when the new bridge was built, it was built to exactly the pattern of the old bridge. This really is quite a typical Lancaster County bridge. Like many of them, it has the Burr arch structure and a fairly simple, not very decorated portal. Just really a typical Lancaster County bridge. It truly is.
Picturesque Zooks Mill Covered Bridge, also known as Cocalico Bridge No. 7, spans Cocalico Creek. Covered bridges of old were called kissing bridges. Sheltering walls and cool darkness framed a perfect opportunity for a private tryst. The romance of covered bridges remains. This couple is having their engagement pictures taken at beautiful, enduring Zooks Mill Covered Bridge. Built with a burr arch, this bridge is over 160 years old. Unlike other covered bridges in the area, Zooks Mill has survived modern traffic and the ravages of Hurricane Agnes.
What you see here today is pretty much the bridge that was built here in the 1840s.
By now you've noticed a lot of covered bridges use a supporting truss called a burr arch, patented way back in 1804 by Theodore Burr, cousin of the notorious Vice President Aaron Burr. A couple of notable exceptions to bridges with arches lie in western Pennsylvania, so that's where we're headed next. Dramatic McConnell's Mill Covered Bridge in McConnell's Mill State Park in Lawrence County has crisscross supports called a Howell truss after the designer. Iron rods allow the bridge to be tightened, a design so clever it was later adopted by railroad-covered bridges across America. Tom Walsick is president of the Theodore Burr Covered Bridge Society of Pennsylvania. Walsick and the society are very active in promoting and preserving covered bridges.
The McConnell's Mill Bridge is located across the Slippery Rock Creek. A lot of kayaks and canoers come here for the whitewater rafting, and it's also very dangerous. The area was formed with the melting of the glaciers that deposited a lot of these large boulders here. The bridge itself was built in 1874. We're quite fortunate here in western Pennsylvania to still have this beautiful example of a covered bridge in grist mill setting, and also with the waterfalls in the background, which gave power to the mill. Even back in the old days, covered bridges were a popular spot. People would gather and enjoy the scenery. We have here a shot of McConnell's Mill Bridge at the early turn of the century with a group of people in their Sunday finest.
Tom Walsick has loved covered bridges since he was 12. He's a collector by nature, photographs, postcards, pins, and more, all with covered bridges. This is a mere fraction of his collection, brought to Kids Mill Covered Bridge over the Shenango River.